I am speaking with whom?
Well, Gerry Crispin. I'm a lifelong student of staffing, and I'm just way too old to tell you about all my other.
I want to jump to some research you've been doing that I was fascinated by. You applied to, I think it was 100 companies under a pseudonym and to discover good hiring practices, correct?
Well, that's one of the things that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I do that almost every single year under very different names. So the first time I did it was under Vinny Boombots, head of credit and collections for Bada Bing Corporation. And I got in a little trouble with that, so over the course of the next decade, I've been doing this with Charlie Brown, Santa Claus. I mean, just Kris Kringle, not Santa Claus, but
So nobody picks up that this is a big gag?
not in 10 years, not one recruiter has ever got it. And the reason why is because when you look at a resume that's inside of a database, you're really engaged in as to whether or not the skill sets are there. You don't really read it for context. I mean, in terms of its whole, you look at it in terms of the specific skill sets that you're looking for. So in the course of 10 years, what I've really been doing is looking at how the initial treatment of candidates who are top quality candidates. Because my resume is obviously, I can lie all the way to the point at which that is the #1 resume that comes up in the ATS. And I demonstrate that year after year after year. What I've learned, for example, is in this past year, about 32% of the 100 best companies in America to work for will tell me that I did not get the job when the job is closed. That means 68% did not bother to tell me when the job is closed.
Let me skip ahead, though. Yeah. I want to know, you were called out a few companies that were doing it well. There was no one company that did everything right, but there were spot things that you liked about doing. So maybe you can mention a company and what, 2 or 3 companies, what the company name and what they did right that you liked.
I think one of the things that Pepsi, for example, is doing is listening much closer, more closely, and State Farm as well, much more closer to their candidates. They're trying to better understand not just what they want to hear and what they need to know in order to make a better decision, but how they want to hear it, in what form, what medium, what are the ways in which we can communicate and do it more effectively so that both the employer can move toward the hire and the job seeker can get the kind of information that allows them to move on or move in.
So how specifically are they doing that?
Any number of different ways, but most of it is the details with which they go after getting information from the candidates at each step of the way. So they'll ask candidates when they apply to be able to provide data to them to examine that experience. So they'll do focus groups, they'll do surveys, they'll do a whole host of different kinds use a whole host of different kinds of technology tools. And they're also doing it around the world. So I know in the case of PepsiCo, they've been doing focus groups all over the world to look at how candidates in different parts of the world might like to be treated in relation to the job, the application, the interviews, etc.
Give me one last example of a company that you're really impressed by.
Well, one of the most impressive companies is a small company called Sage. Sage produces some software, Peachtree software, ACT software, has several thousand employees. They only hire, a couple thousand people a year. Have about a little over a dozen recruiters. And one of the things they do that no one else really does as well is they can make a promise and then gather information to see whether they've delivered on the promise. So in the case of, I'm trying to think of his name. It doesn't come to me at the moment. So in the case of Sage, one of the things that they did so well was they said, when you applied, they said you can expect to be able to complete this application in less than 2 minutes. Now, it's not the 2 minutes. It could be 22 minutes, because when you actually press submit, they then said, how long did it take? And your answer to that went to the head of staffing. They then said, you will hear from a recruiter in 1 to 20 days. And every one of the recruiters knew that on the 20th day of every candidate, an automatic email went to the candidate asking whether or not a recruiter had contacted them. So here is a powerful example of a company that basically drew a line and said, we'll make a commitment to how we're going to treat a candidate on this specific thing, and then we're going to determine whether or not we've lived up to that promise. That's powerful, and to my way of thinking, that's the candidate experience.
That is awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Gerry.
Thank you.